But then again, maybe that's real life, because a lot of people out here be saying they're for the LGBT plus community, but lying on some homophobic dicks. So a lot of girls out here. Hi guys, welcome back to the Shannon Show. Hello if you're new. So today's video is going to be assessing whether Netflix's Winx Club is really that bad. I hope everybody is doing as well as can be, and I really do hope everybody is being as proactive as possible in supporting the Black Lives Matter movement. And if you're still on the lookout for some resources, I've linked some in the description. Feel free to comment down below your thoughts on my commentary. I'm always up for a chat, I'm always up for a debate, and if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you didn't, give it a dislike. No hard feelings. And if you really like this video, consider subscribing and helping your girl out. So Netflix's Winx Club adaptation is finally here, and again, the people are talking. Obviously, I made my video, my initial thoughts based off the trailer. Go watch in full, I'll link it at the end of the video. But for those of you who have watched that video, you will know that I was disappointed with some of the changes to the source material, most notably the whitewashing in the outfits. I wasn't really impressed, and the way that the colours just seemed to be stripped out of it. But going into the series, you know, as a film critic, because that's what I am, I don't just chat shit on this channel, I was going in there to judge it as its own piece of media, despite my disagreements with the changes that they made from the original material. I was willing to see whether with these changes they could make the show work, and I'll let you know if I think that they were successful with that at the end of the video. Right now, what I want to talk about is the discourse centering around the series. Obviously, when the early reviews came out, a lot of people were saying that the show was problematic. People were saying that it was fatphobic, people were saying that it was homophobic, and some even said that it was racist. So that's the things that I wanted to address first. So the first thing I want to address is the accusations of fatphobia, and after watching this series, I think that those accusations do stick, and the actress in question with this storyline is Tara, which I think is kind of ironic, because obviously her character, you know, was a key part in the whole whitewashing controversy, and she is the replacement for Flora. A lot of people are saying she's not the replacement for Flora because Flora is still in the season, but the fact of the matter is that she was cast as Flora initially, and then obviously the directors were like, okay, we can't have a white Flora, that's going to cause a big fuss, so we're going to change her into another character who is Flora's cousin to cover our back. So yes, Flora could now be introduced, but she's an afterthought. A lot of people need to use their brain and think about why they would put somebody's unknown cousin into the show instead of Flora herself. Does that make any sense? So obviously, yes, this casting does constitute as whitewashing, and I feel like the reason why they thought that they could perhaps get away with it with the cover-up is because obviously now this new remix character provides a new type of diversity, which is plus-size diversity, which we don't really have a lot of, especially in the teen drama genre period, regardless of whether it is, you know, drama or fantasy period. We don't have enough plus size representation, which is true. Like I said in my first video, I still feel like they could have gotten a Latina plus size actress, but this is what we've been given, and I think it's ironic that her storyline is inherently fatphobic, because this was kind of the justification for the whitewashing. And I had a lot of discussions with people that said, well, at least we're getting a plus size character, at least we're getting that. And I told people, like, it's just another token. It's just another token in the series. And then what do you know? They have a plus size character and her whole storyline is just centered around her being plus size. Like, that is literally her only storyline. So I just think it's ironic. So, now, I suspected there was going to be perhaps a storyline centering around her weight of some sort, but I didn't think that they were going to go down this route. And this route is worse than what I had imagined. The route that I thought they were going to go down is that it was going to be a slightly patronizing, but something along the lines of, you know, body positivity, body empowerment, you know, a bit patronizing, but, you know, along the lines of, yes, I'm the bigger Winx, but I love myself because of it, and I'm not going to change, type of thing. That's what I was expecting the kind of tokenism representation was going to be centered around. That's what I kind of thought, because when you look at the source material, the Winx Club girls were confident girls. Yes, they had their insecurities, but they knew that they were bad bitches, and they were confident with how they looked. And obviously, a critique with the source material was that the Winx girls were very skinny, and they were unrealistic body standard, which they were, and that there should have been more body diversity within the series, which I think is a valid critique. So I thought that was going to address that, but it was much worse than that. It was much worse than what I was expecting, and pretty much what it was people insulting her about her weight, people making side comments about weight around her being uncomfortable when people were talking about their diets, her being self-loathing, her seeking the validation of other people, her being upset when she couldn't get that validation from other people. There were incidents where she stood up for herself, but then again, very quickly go back to the self-loathing. Nobody's attracted to her, and she knows no one's attracted to her, and she feels bad about herself because of that. There was a lot of her comparing herself to her skinnier castmates who were considered pretty by everybody else, and how basically she thought that she was ugly. Literally, after she stood up for herself, you'd see her being nice again to the people
I know that you and Beatrix
who had ridiculed her, even though they hadn't even apologised to her. There's even one scene where she basically said that she missed being insulted by a particular character who had gone missing.
Maybe.
And it was just like, seriously, like, this, we're still doing this? Like, big 2019, 2020, now 21, we're still running with these storylines. And don't get me wrong, it's realistic that, you know, teenage girls, you know, people who are meant to be teenage girls, you know, have insecurities about themselves. And to a degree, all of these characters had, you know, some insecurities about themselves. But even so, those insecurities weren't focused on. It was very, like, here and there. Whilst Terra, it was literally every single episode. Like, her insecurities
we're gonna go to the party. I'm gonna
was
show
her
everybody that we're
storyline. And it got to the point where I'm not sure if I'm feeling emotionally connected to you or I feel sorry for you. So very much most of the season you just end up feeling really sorry for the character rather than her being a fully fledged character. So for me, it was very disappointing, and I suspected that it was a token casting, but I didn't expect it to be this bad. And I think the storyline was very backwards in my opinion. And not progressive at all. It kind of makes me question, like, you know, the only Winx Club girl that doesn't seem to be confident with the way that they look is the plus size one. It just doesn't really send out the right message in my opinion. But that's my two-piece on that. Which then moves on to the accusations of a homophobic narrative. And again, I'd have to agree. There was a very obvious homophobic narrative, and I think they tried to switch it around so that it was kind of good at the end, but it just never was. And it concerns another kind of token character, black/mixed race boy character. I even forgot his name. I think his name is Dan, I think his name is Dan or something. And again, his sexuality is his whole storyline. You don't really get anything else from the person, and that's their whole storyline, which again is just problematic. It starts off with this whole fragile masculinity storyline, and then it kind of manifests into something a bit more sinister in my opinion, and then it kind of just progresses, and it is kind of headed by the perpetrator of Riven's character, and he just kind of keeps picking at this person because he's got feminine tendencies and basically telling him to toughen up and stop being lame. And then he starts asking him really invasive questions about his sexuality, like, oh, you know, I saw you creeping on my Instagram, like, I know why you were creeping on my Instagram, like, and then it progresses to, oh, you know, are you gay? And then it progresses to, who do you think about when you're doing stuff to yourself at night? So it's just like, it's just very invasive questions. And you see Riven asking, you know, straight couples what they get up to as well, but it's never as intrusive as it is with the queer character in question. Very cringe and very uncomfortable to watch. Why are you asking these questions? Like, it's just so weird, very unnecessary, and it didn't really serve the you know, the storyline that they were trying to create. It wasn't really that good anyway. Overall, it just kind of felt like, is this meant to be representation here? Because it seems so backhanded, and it is actually insulting if you think that this is genuine representation, interrogating people about their sexuality. Like, what? And you thought this was a good idea? By the end of it, it just kind of feels like this queer character was just very objectified because he was often used for sexual storylines. So like when they were trying to be sexy and have three-way kiss and have a bi three-way kiss, and it ended up being a bi storyline, which was just kind of felt like it was thrown in at the end, like, and it just kind of came out of nowhere and wasn't even sexy. It was just cringy. So it was just like, you know, it just didn't really make sense. And then there was, you know, I think there was one scene where one character, Beatrix, defends the guy because obviously River's just kind of tearing into him, defends him, but then proceeds to carry on a relationship with River. So it's like, how are you defending this person and calling this guy out for homophobia and then continuing to have a relationship with him? But then again, maybe that's real life, because a lot of people out here be saying they're for the LGBT plus community but lying on some homophobic dicks. So a lot of girls out here. So in terms of accusations of racism, I did not see anything overtly racist, but I do think there were some sus things, like the lack of development of people of colour in the series, or the fact that racial diversity was just not really brought up in the series at all, despite feminism and sexuality being brought up. But racial diversity and the fact that there was like literally like 2 people of colour at the school was just never brought up. Moving on to that, I feel like in the series there was different sections where, I don't know, a lot of these teen shows now, they kind of put aggressive sound bites into their films that kind of just cosplay as progressiveness but is not really progressive. So a thing that they did a lot was they made quotes about feminism a lot in the series, but it was far from a feminist series. I think it's quite ironic because the showrunner is a white man, and the series was not progressive at all. In fact, I feel like there was very strong misogynist undertones in here, for the simple fact of female friendship was very shaky. There was a lack of female solidarity. It was very superficial, especially with Tara's storyline. The way that they just changed Stella into this bitch who would do anything for her little boyfriend. Beatrix is meant to be this hot nerd prototype who is basically just slanging her pussy around to get some information and get people to help her. Like, that wasn't progressive at all. I'm not sure whether this writer was trying to be ironic here or whether they honestly believe that they were being progressive. It's very weird. On top of that, it just seems like every single social topic that they touched on was not done well. Which brings me on to one of the things that I was disappointed about is the friendships. By the end of it, they were friends, but it took literally till the end of the series for us to get even an essence of friendship. I feel like for most of the series, they were pretty much roommates that were just checking on Bloom to make sure that she didn't go too crazy on her quest of figuring out who she is. It didn't really seem like they cared about her. It just kind of seemed like they wanted to keep Althea in check. There was definitely a lack of chemistry for me. And then obviously with Stella, the Stella situation, it just really just seemed so random. It didn't really make sense to me. And, you know, obviously you can't help but refer back to the source material where it wasn't like that. Where, you know, the Winx girls were kind of somebody who you'd see and you were instant friends. Friendship was such a big part of it, and it definitely didn't really take that long for everyone to warm up to each other. It was just kind of like instant friends. Whilst here, it just kind of feels like they were handling Bloom, and then by the end, they decided that they were all going to be friends and not roommates anymore. But I'd be interested to hear from you guys. Do you feel like there was friendship there and chemistry there within the friendships, or do you kind of just feel like they kind of only really became true friends at the end? What do you guys think? So let's move on to the characters. Now, with the characters, I feel like they did okay with the material they were given. I really wish that they did focus more on the Winx girls though, because the episodes were really long, but it still kind of feels like I didn't really know anyone. And they split the time a lot between the Winx girls and the specialists. Well, obviously in the series you had a bit more time with the Winx Club, with the Winx girls. So I personally would have liked a lot more time with the Winx girls than with the specialists. I wasn't really interested in the specialist storyline, to be honest. But yeah, I'd be interested to hear from you guys. Do you think you enjoyed the kind of evenish split, or do you feel like they should have focused more on the Winx girls? So what did I think of each character? I think Terra, I just kind of felt sorry for her the whole season. I think the first episode I found her very annoying, because even though she's technically now Flora's cousin, she's meant to possess, she is effectively Flora's prototype, and obviously Flora from the source material was very sensitive and shy, and although Terra is very sensitive, she doesn't really seem shy. She's always asking a lot of questions. She's always quite invasive, and she just wants everybody to love her, and she always just wants to chat to people all the time. So at first I thought she was just, at first I found her a bit annoying, and then it just kind of manifested into me feeling sorry for her, because she just seemed like such a desperate character that was just desperate for validation. And I'd love to see her move away from that and not have her insecurities be her own storyline. I'd like to see her progress away from that, but I kind of fear the route that they're going to take down with her is that someone's going to come in and be interested in her, and that's going to give her validation, and that's going to make her feel accepted rather than her just having self-acceptance. But I feel like that's the way it's going to go, unfortunately. We do also get to see her family as well. We get introduced to her brother and her father. I'm not sure what happened to her mum. I'm not gonna lie, it was a struggle for me to retain my attention. Even though her family was there, we didn't really get much of a backstory about her. It was kind of just like her storyline was just about her weight. Musa was just incredibly one-dimensional. We didn't really know anything about her until the final episode. It was just kind of like the whole time she was just had her headphones in.
Sometimes
and then she likes some boy. She kisses him, and then she reveals that her mum died, and that was about it. So yeah, I probably would like to have a bit more time with her and a bit more of a backstory, because it kind of just seems like she was a background character, to be honest. But honestly, her being an empath now, I just feel like the empath thing is such a shitty power. Like, if I was a fairy and empath was my power, I'd be so pissed off. Like, I feel like they should have adapted her power into something else. Anybody can go and look at someone and look into their eyes and know if they're lying and know if they're nervous or not. Like, I just feel like if they were going to adapt her power to something, it should have been something else. So Aisha, I was particularly disappointed with how they did Aisha. Again, no backstory. We literally know nothing about her other than the fact that she swims and is athletic and is Bloom's roommate. We know absolutely nothing about her. Seems like the whole season she was moody because of Bloom, but then also trying to help her, but then also trying to keep Althea in check. Like, sometimes she'd come off a bit aloof or aggressive, and then the worst thing about it is that they made Sis a snitch. So this is not the Aisha that I remember.
Don't snitch.
Aisha was not like this. I just feel like, again, it's another tokenism thing. She's just there to fill the quota, but they didn't really care about her character. Literally know nothing about her character other than the fact that she can swim. And for me, that is a problem. And to me, that tells me that the writers don't care. So yes, I would like to see some development for next season. Bloom, I guess she was an okay character, but she was just a mess this whole season. Like, she was just a mess. Like, I was not invested in her mess, to be honest. Because she was just a mess. I guess she was going through it with her parents and stuff and trying to figure out who she was, but honestly, I really just didn't really care about her, to be honest.
You need to know where you came from.
And then everybody was just catering her. For her to be like the main character where everything is centered around her, I wasn't really emotionally invested. I don't think that's actually the actor's fault. I think that's on the story building, because I feel like Bloom's story definitely could have been built a lot better so that I would be invested in it a lot more. Stella, I feel like she's been done the dirtiest. They've given her a bit of a backstory, but it was just very baffling to me that they made her into this rich, bratty bitch who would do anything for some boy who she hasn't even been together with that long. Like, she will blind people because somebody flirted with her boyfriend. It was just very discombobulating to me, because Stella in the source material was not like that. And you know, she was always helping everybody out. She was making sure everybody had the best fit. Now she's just here in basic fits and just being a bitch. So that was just really confusing to me. And then on top of that, okay, you're gonna make her a bitch now. And even the bitch was like, it was a bit bland, the bitchiness. Like, I was not scared of her.
Well, I don't know
I
you.
was not worried that she was going to do something
But
to
I'm sure
Bloom.
once I do, I'll
There was no
find
suspense. There was no danger.
to
There was no
love.
sense of danger. Obviously, you could tell she was trying to sabotage her. But personally, I think they should have taken it a bit further. Like, there was not one point where I thought that she was going to physically harm Bloom. And that's a problem for me when you're putting stuff in the storyline, like she blinded someone for flirting with her boyfriend even though nothing was going on, but then you're not scared of this character. There's a problem there. And it just felt to me like the writers were like, let's just make Stella a bitch. Let's just make her a bitch. Like, every series has a bitch, so let's make her one. And for me, you know, she kind of redeems herself near the end as well, which is, I just feel like is a cop-out. She wasn't really selling me to bitch. I wasn't really invested in her bitchiness, if you get what I mean. But I'd be interested to hear from you guys. How do you feel about bitch Stella? Do you feel like you kind of like it? Or you're just a bit confused? I'd be interested to hear from you guys. And then there's Beatrix. Now, Beatrix is actually the only character I'm remotely interested in, partially invested in. She was the only interesting character to me. She was the only one that kind of made me think, oh, what is she getting up to? I didn't really care about the rest, to be honest, because I feel like a lot of it was a bit predictable with the other characters. But there was a lot more mystery with this Beatrix character. And I'd love to see that explored more if there's a second season. But yeah, Beatrix was my favourite, to be honest. She's the only person that I cared about. Enjoyed the mischief that she got up to and the things that she would do to get what she wanted. So yeah, good on her. I feel like Standing Alone, it was still okay, such a decent performance. But compared to the rest, she was literally the only compelling character to me at all. I didn't really care about the male actresses, to be honest. I really don't think that token Dan guy is even worth mentioning, to be honest, because I already said, you know, that was his storyline. Riven, I guess the token douche guy, obviously he was a douche in the source material, but I don't remember him being this bad. And he was very cringy at times as well, like very cringy.
Shut up, Riven.
I would love if they could scale that back a bit, because it just got really annoying at times. Like when he'd be on screen, I'd just be like, oh, him again. And you know, even in the source material, yeah, he was a bit aggressive, but I feel like his masculinity wasn't as fragile, and I don't think Riven would be out here making homophobic jokes and sexual jokes all the time, and ginger jokes. Like, it was just like, what? It was just a little bit extra to me, Riven's character. Sky to me was boring, and he was just eye candy. He looked cute, and that was all he was offering me, to be honest. He wasn't really that good of an actor, to be honest. He was just cute. And I didn't really care about the adults, to be honest. It only really got interesting with the adults when it was kind of like, well, who's good and who's bad. And then in terms of the love triangles, the love triangle wasn't really selling me, the love triangle. I love a messy love triangle, but this was not selling me because it just really didn't make sense to me. And again, there was no suspense, there was no drama, and it wasn't sexy. So it's like, if it's not giving me at least one of these, I'm not really interested. And then Musa and Sam's relationship was just so dry, absolutely no chemistry. Like, I feel like in that 1 minute conversation that Musa had with Riven, that had more chemistry than the entire thing that Sam and Musa was supposedly having. Like when she was crying when he was injured,
Why I can't
like
be
there
with
was
Sam
just like
now.
no emotional connection. So yeah, I'm not really invested in any of the romances. If anything, I would say I'm maybe a tiny bit invested in Sky and Bloom, if anything. But definitely
I'm here.
needs to be improvement on the relationship building and on the chemistry building, because the chemistry was a little bit weak for me. The acting was okay. There were some bits which were a bit questionable for me, especially Sky. His acting was very questionable to me.
And now you're just
But
gonna lie
overall,
here and
I'd
take
say
it?
that they did an average
Fuck that.
job on the acting. Good
Sky,
enough
fuck
to
that.
get through an episode. Obviously, I've made a separate video on this, but obviously the wardrobe and the outfits were not it at all. Very disappointed. There definitely needs to be some improvements there. In terms of this new feel of the show, it's meant to be now a mature show. That's what the creator of the show was talking about. Brian Young, I think his name was. He wanted to make it mature and more realistic. But I don't think he achieved what he was saying, because to me, it was very immature. The sexual joke, you know, there was even ginger jokes in here. Like, what the hell? Ginger jokes. And this is meant to be a mature series. And then the fact that they, you know, tried to integrate, you know, drugs into it, like weed and stuff. And it just kind of felt like, you know, those Tumblr pics where people smoke to look cool. That's what it was giving me. It's just like, is this what people just think teenagers do? Like, every weekend we're eating weed brownies and we're blowing smoke rings. Like, is this what you think that teenagers are getting up to? And I'm just kind of thinking,
every time you seem cool, you say something that ruins it.
They're meant to, and then it's not even like they're normal teenagers. They're fairies, and they're meant to be fighting a threat, but they're getting high. And you don't even see anyone high. You know, nobody's visibly high, so it's just kind of, it just felt like decoration to me. So I'm not even sure if they really achieved what they were trying to do, because it seemed like a very immature season to me, to be honest. There was some sexier scenes, I guess, but even still, like, I was not turned on by anything. Like,
Not one bit.
you know, give me something, you know? So in terms of the CGI, I feel like the CGI was okay for the most part. It was decent, even decent CGI. The transformation, obviously we do see Bloom's transformation. She's the only one who transforms. The world building in terms of Althea was actually pretty decent. It did feel like they were in Althea, in this other world, and you know, when they went to that abandoned city, it felt real. So I feel like in terms of the set and the world building in that way, that was probably one of the best things done in this series. A bit underwhelming, I must say, but I guess with the whole feel of the adaption, I would say it was okay. I would have liked to have seen proper wings instead of fire wings though, but I guess this is what we're going to be given. I guess it suits the kind of aesthetic that they're going for, and you know, the burnt ones and this dangerous threat. In terms of the design of that and the way that it looked, I think that was probably the best part of the season. In terms of the script overall, in terms of me, that's what I was looking out for, the script, because I felt like with all of the changes, it was going to be the script to save it. And for me, I feel like the script had potential, but there was just so much mess in this script, and also the structure could have been better as well. In terms of engagement, I struggled to get through pretty much all of the episodes because there were some interesting things happening, but what they did to fill in those gaps for me was boring, when they could have perhaps focused on development. So people are saying, oh, you know, we can get more development last season. I feel like they had enough time to add more development and take out the things that we didn't need, that didn't serve purpose to the script, in my opinion. And I feel like a lot of the stuff that they shoved in these episodes were unnecessary. The first 3 episodes dragged, like it felt like it was taking absolutely forever, and then it picks up a bit at the end of the 4th episode. Then you think you're getting somewhere, and then it kind of, there's an anticlimax again, and then the anticlimax continues until the last half of the last episode, and then the last 20 minutes of the last episode is where it starts to get remotely interesting. So it's this kind of like, I don't know how I feel about a show that only gets good in the last 20 minutes after watching 6 hours of it. So I think there is a structural issue, and I think that could potentially lose people who are skeptical about the show as well. Because if I wasn't watching to review, I feel like I would have just went up in one, because I already had an issue with the changes that they made anyway. So if I was coming in there thinking I'm not sure if I'm going to like it anyway, and then the first episode is a bit boring, so is the second one, there's not really much incentive to carry on watching the rest for some people, I think some people might find. Obviously going forward, I'd like more character development, but I'm always skeptical of that because I feel like in my experience, the way that characters are treated in the first series sets the precedent of how they are going to be treated in the further series, in my opinion. So I don't know guys, about putting my hopes on them developing characters more in the second season. I feel like the narrative was a pretty generic narrative. It's something we've seen before. You know, somebody's been thrown into this magical world. They're trying to now figure out themselves, and the people that they thought they were helping them could actually be evil, and you know, now they don't know who's good and who's bad. We've seen this type of fantasy teen dramas before. It was kind of giving me the Order-esque vibes. I thought that from the trailer, but it was kind of giving me the Order-esque vibes. Some people are saying Riverdale vibes, but I think Riverdale is a lot better than this series, to be honest, dare I say. One thing I didn't really like was the lighting sometimes. Sometimes it would be fine, but then sometimes they'd have this really dark lighting and this blue lighting that was just so dark that sometimes you couldn't see characters' facial expressions. It just feels like they didn't bother to light it properly. Like there were some instances where Aisha, like you couldn't even see her, like literally you couldn't see her face at all. And I was just kind of like, are you not seeing that you can't see all of the characters? Like, shouldn't you relight it? So I think sometimes the lighting could be a bit lazy. Didn't look very flattering and didn't add to any sort of mood. So in terms of whether I think that Netflix's Winx Club is really that bad, I wouldn't say it was bad. I wouldn't say it was bad, but I also wouldn't say that it was good either. I'd say it's pretty average, generic, basic. What I assumed it was going to be. I assumed it was actually going to be a little bit better than what it was. Like I said, obviously the issues that I laid out were not ideal, but on top of that, the acting wasn't strong enough, the story building wasn't strong enough for me to actively invest in this series. So if I wasn't a TV critic, I'm not sure if I would continue watching this series. Personally, I don't think this series was for me. The main thing is that it lacks substance, in my opinion. I think with these teen shows, you can expect a degree of superficiality. You can expect that. But there's just so much superficiality in this show. Like, this show is so shallow and empty and like has barely any development. The outfits aren't even looking good. So for me, there is a low sense of investment in continuing this series for me. And I think if you are over shows like The Order and over shows like Riverdale, this probably is not going to be the show for you if you haven't watched it yet. But if you still love shows like The Order and Riverdale, and are still fine with superficiality, and all you want to do is, you know, escape into this superficial world, then yeah, you probably will like this series and you'll probably love this series. But I think I'm at this time in my life where even with superficiality, I need a degree of substance, and I just don't feel like this has that degree of substance that I need to be able to invest in the series. So I think overall, if I was to rate this season, I would give it a 2.5 out of 5 half marks. Because like I said, I think it's just a bit of an average season. So I think I would say moving forward next season, they've basically already filmed season 2. So if we get a season 2, it's already been made. So any major changes would come in what I would assume to be season 3. But, you know, obviously if I was to watch the second season for review purposes, obviously I would expect for there to be at least a little bit more development for all of the characters, to be honest. Obviously the people who got the least amount of development, them to get more, but all of the characters, because I still kind of feel like I don't really know these girls that much, and the only person I'm kind of interested in is Beatrix, but Beatrix alone is not enough for me to invest in this series, unfortunately. So I think when they start filming new episodes, I'm guessing will be for season 3, I would like more of a distinct look, because I feel like I wasn't sure what distinct aesthetic they were trying to go for. Less of the gimmicks, less of these pointless storylines, less of these pointless progressive sound bites, less of Tara feeling sorry for herself, new wardrobe, new makeup team, new hair team, more chemistry building, and more creativity, because I feel like with these fantasy teen shows, it's always the same thing. Every season there's a new threat, and it just keeps like going round in a circle. And when you do that, and when you keep running with that storyline, you end up like Sabrina and cancelled earlier than you thought you were going to be, because I feel like people are getting tired now. So those would be my improvements going forward. But yeah, this is a long video. I didn't think it was going to be that long, but I hope you've enjoyed it. Do let me know what you thought of the season. If you watched it, did you watch it in full? Did you not? And if you didn't watch it in full, what episode did you get up to? What did you think of the characters? What do you think of the changes that they've made? Do you agree with the accusations of homophobia, fatphobia? Did you like the series? Did you think it was okay? Or did you just hate it? And if the series was to continue, what improvements would you want to see? Of course, let me know what you thought of my commentary. Subscribe if you haven't yet, and if you have, don't forget to put my notification bell on so you know when the next review is dropping. I'm also trying to get to 2.7k subscribers, so I'd appreciate if you help me reach that goal. And thank you to everybody who has subscribed to my channel so far. Till next time, guys, bye.